Well, hello there, and welcome to Getting Sticky and Getting Unstuck with Carissa McIntyre, also known as ladymackxo. I'm an author, and this may or may not be a surprise to some of you, but this first podcast is probably not what some of you were expecting, because it's not the R-rated stuff. Now, I'm sure a lot of you were expecting a podcast by this point. I have been on many and talked about running my own for a really long time. It's something that is sat right on the edge of my work life, especially considering a lot of my content and a lot of my material around my books sometimes becomes hit or miss on other channels. I have been called to do this for a really long time, mostly because I felt called forever to continue what I started years ago with that whole sexumication theme that I had going on. The really fun stuff that I used to do when I used to stream and go live and record videos that were not what I did necessarily for work. And eventually, I'm going to get there with this. Eventually, this is going to go some interesting places. I miss having control of being able to bring on and share and show pretty much whatever I wanted. I miss being referred to as I miss the late nights with Lady Mac, where we would make the Sue Johansson jokes and we'd have a lot of fun. Writing is what I have been doing for the past 10 years. And it has bled into some major areas of my life. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Carissa McIntyre. I am a soon-to-be 12th-time published indie author. I write dark romance and erotica. And in 2017, I fled a domestic violent relationship. I took my children and children who were not mine, and I stayed at the homeless shelter. And I had to rebuild my entire life from the ground up. I'm not going to touch too much on that because a lot of you know that story, and the parts of that story that need to be talked about maybe in more detail in an inspiring or a starting over way we'll come back to. But what I'm sharing in that is that to get out of such a really bad situation, I was really blessed to at the same time publish my first novel. And I loved that. Oh my God, it was incredible. It filled me with joy. It rejuvenated me. It helped my passion. It was everything. And then for the next 8 to 10 years, or however long it has been, I continued to write full time. And I continue to do that for my job, to pay the bills. And let me tell you, it sucks. Writing for a living doesn't suck. Let me take a step back. But using the one thing that I found joy, my favorite hobby, my favorite passion, and using it as a full-time job, and not as a full-time job in creative writing for myself or my novels, because my novels do all right, but they don't do everything. So I supplement that. And there's not always times to supplement or to be able to be picky and choosy to supplement that with the things that fill me with joy. So for years, I used my hobby to do work I didn't enjoy, and it drained me of my creative spark to do my own hobby. and to write for myself. And I started falling into these cycles. And they really tend to happen around the summer time when there's a big shift in my life. And I really just don't have the passion, the creativity, the spark, and the self-love to do the things that I want to do for myself, because I'm caught in this awful cycle with work, with life, with creativity. And this year, when that cycle came again, just the last month, I had enough, guys. I had enough. It was truly time to sit with this cycle and to sit with what was going on in my life and to sit with these feelings and to sit with my work and to sit with these big decisions and figure out what was going on. And what was going on was burnout. For everything. Not just burnout for my job, not just burnout for work. It was burnt out for life. And so I took a big step back. I've been hustling and being an entrepreneur and building things for years. Being an author is not my first dip of the toe into the entrepreneur world. I realized my burnout wasn't just from sharing and using my creativity and my passion. And please, nobody see this as not being grateful. But let's say you're a painter and you're blessed to be selling your paintings and you really love painting pictures of landscapes. And for years, you are bombarded with payments for paintings of trash cans and things that are so outside of your love. And you know what? Those are great for a year or two and they pay the bills. And you pivot and you pivot and you pivot your advertising and you pivot your content and you pivot and you pivot and you still get paid for trash cans and you just don't want to paint landscapes anymore. Not for yourself, but just period, right? And that's a sucky thing to sit with when all you wanted your whole life is to be a painter, right? So when I took this step back, I realized I no longer knew what I wanted to do with my life. Because I do want to be a writer and I do want to write for me and I have all of these stories to share, but I don't know if that's what I want to do anymore. And that's a scary thing to say at 40 years old. Well, hold on, soon to be 40. That's a really big, scary thing to say. It's a vulnerable thing to say you don't know what you're doing, you don't know where you're going, you don't know what you want, you don't know where to go, and that's not an easy change to make. And you are trapped in this burnout cycle of exhaustion. So I started sharing this with my friends in my social media. I was very vulnerable. I made some recordings. I said, hey guys, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I basically slid into vlogging and was like, I need to just share this. Like, I'm not looking for solutions. I'm not looking, I share, please, if you have some. But I'm just struggling and I just need to be vulnerable and share this. And what I found was a tremendous amount of my friends were in the same place. And not necessarily because of the same things. Like maybe it's not that they've been using their hobby to pay their bills. Maybe what they took in school 20 years ago sucks now. People change, we grow. Maybe something has happened in their life that has put them on a trajectory that they are also burnt out in, okay? It was kind of like weirdly eye-opening to realize that like I felt very isolating and it felt very shameful to say like, I don't know if I love what I'm doing anymore, even though it has been my hobby and my passion, my biggest dream, and I feel very stuck. So in all of this, I missed what I had mentioned in the beginning, where I used to use social media and used to go live and used to video and used to stream, and it wasn't for work and it wasn't for promotion. It was that late night with Lady Mac where I did my sexumication and we just did fun stuff and we just talked. So I thought, what if I just started going live and streaming on certain platforms and where I don't have a big audience based around my novel? So I chose TikTok. And then I began to find a tremendous amount of people that were going through the same thing there. And these weren't my friends. These were complete strangers. These were not my audience from my novels. These were people who did not know who I was or anything. And we are all kind of coming together and being like, I feel stuck and I don't know what to do. It started to feel like there are multiple generations that are running at like an 80% capacity of burnout. And like 15% are coasting. But I bet if they dug deep, they would be like, something needs to change. And then we got like 5% that are like, fucking yeah, life is good. And I'm not talking about being depressed, and I'm not talking about, needing to hire a coach to figure some things out. I am talking about just being burnt out from whatever we've been doing for the last 25 years and not knowing how to get out of this cycle. Some of us don't need a massive change and to start a whole new job and run away to a whole new country, but something's missing and we are tired and struggling. And I can't stop thinking about that and wondering what that means. Now, and I don't mean that we need to find some motivation, and I don't mean that we need to find some clarity, and there's no one size fits all answer. And I mean, everybody got here from vastly different paths, and all of our burnout stems from vastly different things. Okay. Like, again, some people are just at a point where they've changed and they've grown from the life they have set for themselves for the last 25 years. A lot of people have had the same experiences that I've had, though, where a random 4 p.m. event on a Tuesday that you could have never, ever prepared you for has absolutely derailed your entire life path. Whether that be an accident, a life-changing incident, a death, a physical issue, a mental issue that absolutely changes your entire life overnight. A lot of people ended up in these situations and this path in life and this area because of these 4 p.m. Tuesday events that we had no control over. And that doesn't take away from anybody who busted their ass to be where they are right now and then also hates it. Okay? This is what I mean. Like, we are all here for very different reasons. And there is no one answer fits all, and there's no one thing. But in the core of all of that, there is something that we can all connect to. There is something that resonates with all of us and brings us all into this same place of, what am I going to do? So I stepped into a pretty public journey of burnout and finding myself and my passion and what I want to do with my life. I just kind of opened the door this last month and said, I don't know what I'm doing anymore, and I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to bring you guys along with me. Basically, I'm going to wade through this sticky mess of my life, all of the things that cling to me that I can't handle anymore, and it's time to get unstuck. And by embracing that, I realized how I just honestly think a lot of us need to talk about that and embrace that together. And I don't mean to say that people aren't talking about it. Of course, you can scroll YouTube, you can scroll the podcasts, you can scroll social media and find tons of people that are trying to inspire you and all of these coaches and all of this, but hear me out. I wrote a self-love journal after I fled a domestic because I wanted to speak to people from a place of where I was broken too. I didn't want to share with people after I had healed. I didn't want to be somebody who was fixed and this big, powerful influence, then talking to the people where I was. I still wanted to be there and share what I had to share. I don't want to circle back to this in 2 years when I've found my passion and I know what I'm doing and be like, hey guys, let me tell you what I did and here's some steps to take. Because that's not what I want to do with this. My steps that I'm going to take may not apply to any of you. But where I go to discover them, what I'm doing, how I'm digging through that, that is what I truly feel will resonate with a lot of people. And as soon as I started putting that out there, a lot of people came back and were like, bring me with you. I have stuff to share too. So I plan to pre-record a handful of these podcasts, and then I plan to bring some guests on, and then I plan to just kind of run with it. And we're going to use it to chase my passion, to discover what I'm doing, to figure out what I want to do with my life, you know? Because even though we all have majorly different lives and goals and wants and needs and dreams and reasons why we got derailed and where we want to go from here, there is a little bit of something that we can take from everybody along this journey. There is a tremendous amount of strength to being vulnerable, and I am proud of all of us for admitting that we are in a vulnerable state, that we are burnt out, that we are tired, that we are exhausted, that we need more, and we don't know how to get there. We don't have to know that next step. We just kind of have to know that we need to take it. I'm being vulnerable with you guys here. More vulnerable than I have been pretty much since I fled a domestic and said, hey guys, I'm homeless. I'm being really vulnerable right now and telling you guys I don't know what I'm doing. I'm 40 years old. I'm lost. I'm burnt out. I don't have a passion for what I was doing anymore, and I need to find that again. And I'm going to use this as a way to do that. You know, I'm not in a place in my life where I want to be. And I'm really proud of where I've come from. Like, and this isn't to say that either. It's just to say that I'm stuck. You know, I don't know where I want to be in life, but I'm going to figure that out. And I know that no matter what that looks like, I'm not alone in that. So if you're feeling a little stuck, I invite you to come along this journey with me, where I dive into all this sticky and unstuck myself. Also, I thought that was really cute because someday I will lead back into the smexmication, and we got a lot of sticky stuff to cover.